The Shooting Range. Hello, friends. We're happy to celebrate episode number 300 of The Shooting Range. Huge thanks to everyone watching us all these years, and to everyone who joined recently. Thanks to all of you waiting for a new episode every Sunday, and to everybody finding time for it in the middle of the week. Whether you're a tanker, a pilot, or a Navy captain, whether you come here following your heart or the notification bell, we're eternally grateful to all our viewers and plan to continue bringing joy to you with your favorite sections. Now it's time to say, in this episode, Pages of History, Armor That Can Fly, Tactics and Strategy, Surviving on Armorless Tanks, and Metal Beasts, The Last Starfighter. What plane do you first associate with speed? We'd think of the Starfighters introduced to War Thunder with the update of the same name. Aircraft of this family have already lost their leadership in speed, but their incredible dynamics and stunning looks have left an unforgettable impression. And today's Metal Beast is the most advanced among all the Starfighters. The top Italian F-104S, version ASA. ASA in this model stands for Aggiornamento Sistema d'Arma, which means in English, Weapon Systems Update. Let's take a closer look at this machine. Its power plant is a turbojet engine with an afterburner. The fuel is stored in self-sealing tanks in the center of the fuselage. In front of them, we can see a 20mm autocannon with an ammo pool of 750 rounds. The nose cone hides an onboard radar system. The plane's suspended armament can include bombs, rockets of various calibers, and guided air-to-air missiles with infrared and radar homing devices. All earlier Italian starfighters have gained fame as dangerous enemies for their battle rating, but each had its own flaw. One could only carry 2 IR missiles, another one had no countermeasures. However, the top version of this machine combines all the advantages of its predecessors and even surpasses them in some ways. First, it can carry the all-aspect Sidewinder air-to-air missiles. Considering the Starfighter's flight performance and tactics, the frontal attack capability is crucial since you don't often get an opportunity to tail an enemy. Choose the most vulnerable targets to use these missiles successfully. It usually means aircraft that lost speed in a dogfight. When you're out of suspended armament, you still have your good old 20mm Vulcan. With a high rate of fire, amazing accuracy, and great ammo pool. There's little wonder why this gun became so popular among jets. This Italian top also has an alternative set of weaponry that includes 2 radar-guided Aspide missiles. They're very good, actually among the best in their class. Moreover, the onboard radar with the moving target indication capability won't hinder you at low altitudes. But the price you'll have to pay for them is dropping half of the Sidewinders and the built-in cannon. Is this sacrifice worth it? It's hard to give a straight answer here. It's all about the pilot's personal preferences and habits. Some playstyles favor infrared missiles and a cannon, while others would find the Aspides invaluable. Now, the Starfighter's own anti-missile protection is simply great. The ludicrous speeds the F-104 can fight at allow more than just dodging. It can simply leave many missiles behind. Should the missile launch happen at point blank or simply too close, this fighter has countermeasures totaling 60 units. In mixed battles, the Starfighter has limited use. Much like many fighters, it can only attack ground vehicles when the enemy has no AA defense. Its ballistic computer can help you make your bombs and rockets count. But unfortunately, This hot-tempered Italian accelerates too quickly in a dive. To avoid turning yourself into a cruise missile, make sure you use the air brakes and reduce thrust. By the 1930s, transport airplanes and bombers found their way into the doctrines of many nations. For the next step, the military started considering airborne forces. The idea of putting your troops in the enemy rear and getting the element of surprise was an appealing one. But for comprehensive action, airborne troops needed heavier weaponry, and that's how they arrived at the idea of airlifting armored vehicles. The Soviet Union was the first to make a move in this field. As early as in 1935, the TB-3 bombers managed to airlift a light tank, an armored car, and more than 1,000 troops. A year later, the Army tried to drop amphibian tanks from low-flying planes right into the water, but it backfired. The hulls of the machines burst from colliding with the water, and they sank. Still, these mishaps didn't cancel the whole idea of airlifting tanks. The Red Army was limited by a lack of suitable planes. The new PE-8 heavy bomber production was complicated and took a lot of effort on the industry side, which meant only a few were being made. Meanwhile, Europe had some developments of its own in the tank airlifting business. In 1938, a British company, Vickers, launched their Tetrarch production. They'd been originally meant to replace outdated light tanks, but the military soon discarded the entire class, so the new machines found a new use as airborne tanks. They were only employed in a real battle once, during the Normandy landing. Despite losing a few tanks to crashes, the whole operation was a success. The Tetrarch tanks confused enemy plans and made the Germans stop their counterattack, despite the fact that the tanks had hopelessly outdated armor and guns by the time of the operation. The New World military didn't miss this idea either, working on their own solutions. The American M22 Locust was originally developed as an airborne tank, light and compact. Although, as it turned out later, it wasn't compact enough. No American plane could fit one in its entirety. The engineers came up with an idea of carrying just the turret inside, attaching the chassis to the bottom outside. But for some reason the military didn't like it. Some of the Locusts were later given to the British. They were perfect to replace the old Tetrarch tanks, and England did have suitable transport airplanes. Much like the Tetrarch, the M22 was only used once in battle, in March 1945. One tank met a Panther head-on, right after the landing, and was destroyed. A few more were damaged during the landing, while others managed to support the airborne attack just fine. After the war, the French attempted to send their tanks to the skies. The future AMX-13 was meant to become an airborne tank. It turned out to be a very good light machine with a powerful 75mm gun, but all too heavy to be transported by air. Then in 1954, they started working on a tank with a weight of only 6 tons. The engineers managed to meet the unusually tough requirements and presented the light ELC BIS tank with a unique low profile. Both crew members, the driver and the commander, sat in the turret armed with a 90mm cannon. Due to crew placement, the turret could not rotate much on the move because the driver would lose the view of the road ahead. Both prototypes finished the tests, but in 1961, the project was closed. Nowadays, looking at mid-20th century airborne tanks, one can reach a conclusion that they were just playing around and wasting money. But you should keep in mind that all the drawbacks of those machines were a direct result of the harsh limits imposed by the capabilities of contemporary transport aircraft. The situation soon changed dramatically. Modern aviation can easily airlift a 50-ton MBT, let alone lighter vehicles, so there's no need for specialized small tanks anymore. Still, Numerous engineering solutions created during the development of those tanks turned out to be useful later. In previous episodes, we've already covered the tactics of playing slow, heavy tanks and HE carriers that have often had to resort to single-direction fighting. Today, however, we'd like to talk about the opposite style, the one employed by light tanks. These machines constantly move around the map, thus capable of infiltrating the most vulnerable parts of enemy defenses. To represent the theoretical generations of the class, we'll take the American M24, the French AMX-13, and the Soviet Object 906. As usual, we'll start with an urban map, say Eastern Europe. At early ranks, light tanks are often armored with the same as other classes. They have enough penetration even for frontal attacks, but no armor or survivability to speak of, which means you need to attack in areas where your mobility advantage is easier to use. At first, it feels like lines B and C on the opposite bank are good, but unfortunately, long-distance shots are an issue with such a poor muzzle velocity. However, the perfect area is here, close to the river, along the D line. It gives you a lot of firing lines at the main approach. Here's another good place, the forest near Line F. It's easy to get lost in the greenery on a small machine and strike the flanks. At middle ranks, the light tanks are so much faster than other machines that they can perform an early push towards the enemy part of the map, like squares E4 and E5. Such a push at the beginning of the battle can have a serious impact on the whole battle, or at least the central point's fate. By the way, fast reload rates will come in handy here, since you're certain to meet multiple enemies. Previously mentioned tactics along lines D and F are still valid, and it's also still meaningless to join long-distance fights. Yes, your ballistics are good enough at this rank, but your enemies have thicker armor too. Remember to compare your weapon's performance to your opponent's armor every time you join a fight like this. However, top-ranking light tanks such as Object 906 always have enough penetration. If a capped round can't do the job, an HE will help. The priority areas for these machines are the highs near lines B and C. The familiar forest is far from the best choice here. Poor depression angles limit your firing capabilities with the central approach. Light tanks have to be extra careful in top-ranking fights. Many enemy tanks can send a fragile saboteur to the hangar without a single cannon round fired, simply spraying it with large-caliber machine guns. Now, let's see what light tanks can do on an open map, the fields of Normandy. The mobility advantage is little on early ranks, and the firepower levels are similar, so the only thing light tanks can do is attack from the front, which means it makes sense to look for an area full of natural cover, like the one in the northern part of the map or near Point B. Still, we believe the best tactic here is to support some heavier ally. Wait till the enemy shoots. Upload your weapon into them right away and retreat to cover. If your ally is damaged, help them with repairs. Medium-ranked light tanks have an excellent level of mobility. Thanks to that, they can push the enemy rear on the fields of Normandy between points A and B. If you manage to stay undiscovered, you'll have a nice chance to top up your score with a few careless opponents. Later, light tanks combine the advantages of all their predecessors. They can employ both tactics on an open landscape, push through enemy defenses in the rear, or fight alongside the main forces. Longer distances make machine guns ineffective, so the main danger is enemy cannons. But light tanks have a higher rate of fire, so enemies usually have to retreat after every shot. So, summing up, light tanks are first and foremost an effective tool for flank attacks. But it's not unknown to see a tiny little machine change the tide on the main approaches. For instance, it can ambush an enemy column in a tight urban street or help a heavier ally survive a frontal attack. And of course, there's also the class task for light tanks, active scouting. It helps your team navigate the battlefield and reduces the price of an air spawn. That's it for light tanks. Stay eagle-eyed and have some nice diversions. Meanwhile, we'll answer some of your questions. The first question was sent by a player called Nope Defender. Why do guns on aircraft jam? And how do you unjam them in RB? Hi there, Nope Defender. Machine guns and cannons can jam due to overheating. To avoid that, limit your fire to short volleys. In realistic mode, you can fix this back on the airfield. Napalm Cobra asks, what is the fastest MBT in the game? The highest speed record belongs to the American XM-1 tank, 83 kilometers per hour. Another question comes from Marchetti Creator. Is there a large caliber cannon with a fast reload rate in War Thunder? Hi there. Yes, we've got something special for you. The Swedish band Cannon 1C can launch a 155mm round at the enemy every 3 seconds. A Mastery writes, why are other factors like optics not a part of the tank comparison? Out of all the light tanks here, the Swedish CV90120 has the easiest time acquiring and aiming at 2 kilometers distance thanks to its superb optics. Hello, A Mastery. We're actually taking each and every aspect in triathlon, even the tiniest ones. We don't always mention all of them since our videos can only be so long, but rest assured, we never miss a detail. Even if something didn't have a major impact in one of the tests, we're certainly weighing it in before the awards ceremony. And the last comment for today was written by Cameron Olney. If an A-10 is shooting from across, is there a sound delay? Hi, Cameron. Much like in real life, sound travels at a certain speed in War Thunder, which means you can't hear it at once if you're far away. Here, take a listen. That's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe and click the bell if you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget to leave a like. Try to react to flashes rather than sound, since it might be too late. Share your thoughts and comments, and we'll see you next week.